The shuttle doors slid open with a pressurized hiss, releasing Lyra Hale into the blinding atrium of the Aurelion Interstellar Institute. The station floated in a silent orbit over the blue-white star Vexorus 4, but its interior pulsed with color, noise, and the movement of dozens of species threading through translucent corridors. Every pair of eyes, multifaceted, luminous, reptilian, or shifting, locked on her the second she stepped across the threshold. A ripple of unease spread through the lobby. Conversations dropped. 3 students stepped aside in sync, their frilled necks flaring instinctively. Even the cleaning drones paused, recalibrating their threat assessment systems as if a glitch had entered the room. Lyra adjusted the strap of her pack and moved forward. Her father had once told her that Deathworlders survived by controlling the space around them, not by dominating it. "Walk like you belong," he had said. "And they'll run out of reasons to doubt you." She repeated those words silently and headed toward the registration console. The attendant, a tall, glass-skinned Vedhari, recoiled softly when Lyra approached. Its voice vibrated like tapping crystal. "State your designation." "Lyra Hale. Human. First-year class." She kept her tone steady, polite. The Vedhari scanned her status chip, its expression unreadable. "Human registration, confirmed. You may proceed." It paused. "Your species requires continuous monitoring for safety compliance. Please do not deviate from designated paths." Lyra offered a small nod. "Understood." She walked on, passing banners detailing the Institute's heritage, 7 millennia educating the brightest of the galaxy. Until today, none of those students had ever been human. Her first class was already filling when she arrived. The room was shaped like a crescent, with tiered seating spiraling around a raised platform where hologlyphs flickered in geometric patterns. Students murmured as Lyra entered, their eyes widening, antennae stiffening, tails coiling tight. A deep, resonant pulse echoed through the hall, the arrival of the instructor. High Instructor Vroth Cawthon stepped onto the platform with deliberate authority. His tall frame cast a spine silhouette, and his 4 pupilled eyes swept across the class like scanners. When they stopped on Lyra, something colder replaced curiosity, calculation. "A new species has been admitted," he announced, voice thick with ceremonial disdain. "A Deathworlder. Human." Several students shivered. Vroth's gaze remained fixed on her. "We will begin by assessing compatibility." He gestured toward the central hologlyph. Lines of alien script twisted into a rotating sphere of data. "Each student must identify the pattern sequence and correct the corrupted segment," he said. "Standard comprehension exam." A murmur rose. This assignment usually appeared during end-of-term evaluations. Lyra met the challenge without blinking. "Human," Vroth said. "Front platform." She stepped forward. The room fell silent except for the hum of the hologlyph. "Begin," he ordered. The sphere glowed brighter, spinning faster until symbols blurred into a storm of data. Lyra inhaled, focusing on the shifting layers. Her brain sifted through the patterns, isolating the rhythm beneath the chaos. Human childhood had been full of puzzles built to sharpen instincts. This felt like one of those afternoons when her father asked her to rebuild a broken interface under a scorching sky. "There," she said, touching a faint distortion buried under the outer ring. The sphere froze. A soft chime rang. Students whispered in disbelief. Vroth's jaw tensed. "Correct." No praise. Only irritation. She stepped back to her seat as he launched into the lesson, but she caught his sideways glance, wary, probing. The day soured further when she returned to her dorm pod. The gravity inside had spiked. Her boots hit the floor with a jarring weight that crushed her knees to the ground before she recovered. Her vision blurred. Muscles strained against a force meant to immobilize her. Someone had overridden the habitat settings. Lyra exhaled carefully and rolled onto her side, inching toward the control panel. She pressed a sequence her father drilled into her years ago. The gravity hummed and dropped to normal levels. She stood slowly, checking the pod's interfaces. Someone had wiped the access logs. Sloppy, she muttered. A faint rustle behind her made her turn. Her locker sagged slightly, the seal uneven. She opened it and stepped back immediately. A cloud of faint green spores drifted into the air. Her eyes watered, but her lungs didn't burn. Human immune systems weren't legendary for nothing. Still, she stepped out of the pod and alerted maintenance. When the cleanup crew arrived, one of them scanned the spores and frowned. "This strain is dangerous to most species," he warned. "To you, uncertain." "It's fine," she said. "Thank you." He stepped away quickly, unsettled by her calm. By late evening, Lyra sought refuge in the central courtyard, lit by the soft glow of bioluminescent plants. She sat beneath an archway, reviewing the day in her mind. The glares. The sabotage. Vroth's challenge. Every part of this place wanted her gone. Footsteps approached, heavy, deliberate clicks on polished stone. Lyra turned. A massive insectoid student stood before her, armored plates shifting with quiet precision. His mandibles clicked as he studied her. "I saw what you did," he said in a low, rumbling tone. "During class. And in the corridor afterward." Lyra met his compound eyes. "You mean, not panicking?" He gave something like a shrug. "Most species would have collapsed under gravity pressure. Or screamed at the spores. You remained steady." "Impressive." She offered a faint smile. "I'm used to rough environments." "I am Raxon," he said. "Warrior caste. We value strength and restraint. You show both." She nodded. "Lyra." Raxon glanced around. "There are whispers that Instructor Vroth is preparing a review of your behavior. Something official." "He wants me out," she said, voice calm but firm. Raxon's mandibles clicked again. "He fears what he does not understand." "Many do." Lyra tilted her head. "And you?" "I do not fear competitors," he said simply. "I watch them. And I decide whether they deserve respect." Before she could reply, the courtyard lights flickered. A notification chimed on her wrist plate. "Student Hale, report to discipline chamber. Now." Her stomach sank. Raxon caught her reaction. "Go," he said. "But be cautious." The discipline chamber was cold, sterile, and silent. 3 figures formed a semicircle around her, administrators with stiff posture and unreadable expressions. Vroth stood behind them like a shadow. "Lyra Hale," the center administrator said, "you are under review for disruptive tendencies and unsafe responses to environmental triggers." Lyra frowned. "I reported those triggers." Vroth stepped forward. "Your species record shows violent tendencies under stress. Your reaction patterns match statistically concerning profiles." Her hands curled slightly, but she kept her voice steady. "I remained calm in every instance." The administrator tapped a console. "Given these concerns, Instructor Vroth has requested an expulsion tribunal." Lyra felt the air tighten. Vroth smiled with refined satisfaction. "For safety." She didn't flinch. "Then I'll be there." The administrators dismissed her. As she stepped into the dim corridor, her wrist plate buzzed again. An automated system had flagged her stress levels. She ignored it and walked back toward her dorm, jaw set. The galaxy thought Deathworlders were dangerous. But tonight proved something else entirely. The real danger was how far they'd go to remove her. Lyra woke before her alarm, long before the station lights shifted into morning hues. Sleep had come in shallow fragments, broken by the echo of the tribunal announcement looping in her mind. She sat up slowly and let the quiet settle around her. Somewhere deep inside, the shock had worn away, leaving something steadier, a resolve she hadn't expected to find on her first week here. She stood, splashed cold water over her face, and tied her hair back. Humans weren't allowed weapons at the Institute, appearance was the only armor she could adjust. When she left her pod, the corridors were still half-lit, the air cool from night cycle regulation. Raxon waited by the archway. He didn't speak until she reached him. "You did not retreat," he said, folding his arms. "Most species avoid a tribunal at all costs." Lyra shrugged lightly. "If I don't fight this, they'll use it against every human that comes after me." Raxon's antennae twitched. "You are thinking like a strategist." "I'm thinking like someone who refuses to be erased." He considered the words, then gave a small nod. "Good. You will need that mindset today." They walked in silence through the corridor leading to the xenobiology wing. Light filtered through crystalline panels overhead, casting shifting colors across the floor. It would have been beautiful if not for the tension crackling beneath the surface. Every student they passed gave Lyra the same look, curiosity sharpened by suspicion. Mary met them inside the study alcove. Her delicate frame, covered in soft moss-like fur, contrasted sharply with Raxon's heavy exoskeleton. She wrung her hands as Lyra approached. "I'm glad you're here," Mary said. "There's something you need to see." She tapped her wristband, projecting a small sphere of captured footage into the air. The holo played silently at first, a hallway outside Lyra's pod, moments before the gravity spike. A figure approached the control panel, cloaked in a shimmering veil that distorted shape and color. A familiar voice broke through the distortion. "Reset logs. Increase pressure to 90%. She will break eventually." "Vroth." Lyra's throat tightened. Mary expanded the frame. The recording was embedded inside dormant security metadata. Someone deleted the official version, but they missed the diagnostic backup. Raxon leaned in. "Cowardly tactics." Lyra stared at the image, at the grainy outline of her instructor tampering with her environment. The spiked gravity. The spores. It hadn't been paranoia. It was calculated. "Can this be used?" she asked. "Yes," Mary said. "But exposing it will anger Vrotha's allies. Some hold high positions." Lyra let the thought settle. "The tribunal won't be fair. Vroth knows I don't have the political pull to counter him." "Not alone," Raxon said. "But you are not alone anymore." Mary looked almost embarrassed by her own courage. "We believe you, Lyra. And we intend to help." Lyra's lips curved into a faint, grateful smile. "Thank you." The rest of the morning passed in tense coordination. Mary explained council protocol, how evidence must be presented in structured phases, how each word could be twisted, how officials often used intimidation to derail weaker arguments. Lyra absorbed everything with laser focus. Raxon, with his warrior precision, drilled her on posture. Council members read body language. If you shift your weight too often, they assume dishonesty. If you look down, they assume fear. If you lean forward aggressively, they think I'm a feral deathworlder, Lyra finished. He clicked his mandibles. "Exactly. Hold your stance like you are facing a storm." They trained until the lighting panels shifted to midday brightness. Lyra's body moved with deliberate control, her mind sharpening with each passing hour. Every step she took felt heavier with the knowledge of what lay ahead, yet steadier with the presence of the two students standing with her. Classes resumed, but Lyra barely registered the lessons. Students whispered louder than usual today. Rumors tangled like threads, some painting her as a danger, others claiming she was framed. A few glanced at her with something new in their eyes, doubt in the story they'd been told. After class, Lyra walked to the archives, hoping to review council history. She needed context, understanding the system meant knowing how to confront it. Inside, rows of crystalline shelves hummed with stored data. She reached for a console when a soft chime echoed behind her. "Human." She turned to find an administrator standing nearby, thin and sharp-featured, with skin that shifted in reflective waves. "Yes?" Lyra asked carefully. "You were seen consulting with unauthorized students. You should reconsider your alliances." His tone was cool, rehearsed. "A tribunal is not a place for idealism." Lyra's jaw tightened. "Truth isn't idealism. The administrator studied her, eyes narrowing. Do not assume your courage makes you safe. Before she could respond, he left without another word. She stared at his retreating figure, then returned to the console. The warning had been deliberate, a reminder that she was already walking on a blade's edge. Still, she loaded the database. She scanned reports, rulings, and archived trials. Patterns emerged, prejudiced decisions cloaked in formal language, dismissal of evidence from marginalized species, internal politics dictating outcomes more than facts. This system isn't built for justice, she whispered. It can be forced to behave, Mary said, appearing beside her. But only if someone stands at the center and refuses to yield. Lyra exhaled slowly. Then I guess that someone has to be me. Later that evening, Raxon summoned both of them to a secluded space near the engineering wing, a vault-like alcove where dormant power conduits hummed softly. He activated a private field to block surveillance. This will interest you, he said. He projected a series of corrupted files onto the wall. Each contained pieces of conversations, system alerts, and internal memos tied to Vroth. Most were incomplete, but one file remained partially intact. A recording appeared, Vroth speaking with 2 council delegates. The human problem must be resolved quickly, one delegate said. Her success undermines our platform. Vroth replied, leave it to me. I will provoke her, and the tribunal will remove her before the cycle ends. Lyra clenched her fists. There it was. Conspiracy, clear as day. Mary's voice trembled as she spoke. With this and the hallway footage, you can dismantle his entire case. But it will expose all of you, Lyra said. You'll become targets too. Raxon straightened. Warriors do not hide behind fear. Mary nodded, softer but equally resolute. Nor do scholars who believe in truth. Lyra had no words for the loyalty before her. Instead, she placed her hand on the projection controls and saved the files to her encrypted band. Tomorrow, she said, everything changes. Night cycle descended. The station dimmed until only faint lines of light marked the edges of corridors. Lyra returned to her pod, exhaustion pulling on every muscle, though her mind remained sharp. She stared at her reflection, a Deathworld girl far from home, carrying the weight of a species on her shoulders. She thought of her mother telling her stories of old Earth storms, how lightning carved through darkness and changed the sky in an instant. Lyra felt that same electricity stirring inside her now. She had walked into this institute alone. She would step into the tribunal with truth, allies, and the resilience of her entire world behind her. As she lay down, she whispered to herself. They wanted a reason to fear humans. Now they'll learn the real one. And for the first time since arriving, she slept without flinching when the lights dimmed. The tribunal chamber felt colder than any place Lyra had stepped into since arriving at the institute. Towering columns lined the circular hall, each carved with symbols of authority older than most species present. Delegates filled the tiered seats, their robes shimmering in muted tones. The air carried a quiet tension, the kind that settles before a storm breaks. Lyra entered through the central aisle, Raxon at her left, Mary at her right. Their presence steadied her heartbeat. A low hum signaled the beginning of the session. The 3 presiding counselors descended to their podiums, each wearing an expression polished into neutrality. Behind them, Instructor Vroth took his place at the prosecution stand, shoulders squared with confidence. Proceed, the lead counselor commanded, voice echoing across the chamber. Vroth stepped forward. Honored counsel, the matter is simple. The human student, Lyra Hale, has displayed unstable tendencies incompatible with institute conduct. Her continued presence threatens the safety of all. He projected a series of clips, carefully edited footage showing fragments of the incidents. A locker door slamming. Gravity fluctuations. Lyra stepping away from the spores with a steady expression. Each clip stripped of context, each frame to cast suspicion. Vroth folded his hands. Humans are categorized as an apex Deathworld species. Their physiology and unpredictable reactions make them unsuitable for environments requiring restraint. Lyra met his gaze without wavering. The counselor turned to her. "Student Hale, do you wish to respond before we continue?" "Yes." She stepped into the center of the platform. "But I'll respond after the prosecution finishes presenting everything." Her voice carried calmly, but a flicker of irritation crossed Vroth's features. The second counselor spoke. "Instructor Vroth, proceed with remaining evidence." Vroth nodded. "As you will." Another series of videos appeared, this time showing scattered testimonies from students. Some claimed she was intimidating. Others said she showed unusual tolerance to hazardous conditions, suggesting she posed a biological risk. Whispers filled the chamber. When Vroth ended his presentation, he looked satisfied. "Based on these facts, I request immediate expulsion." Lyra stepped forward. "May I speak now?" "Granted," the lead counselor replied. Lyra placed a hand over her wristband and activated her evidence log. "Everything shown so far is incomplete. I'll present the full sequences." Her footage unfolded across the chamber wall, a holographic panorama of the original incidents. First, the gravity spike. This time, the recording began several seconds earlier, revealing a cloaked intruder at the control panel. The distortion veil flickered, and the voice emerged clearly. "Reset logs. Increase pressure. She will break eventually." The hall fell silent. Delegates leaned forward, stunned. Lyra continued. "That voice belongs to Instructor Vroth." A wave of sharp murmurs spread through the tiers. Vroth stiffened. "Fabrication. A digitally manipulated." Lyra raised a hand. "There's more." She played footage from the corridor outside her pod, this time the untouched version Mary had recovered. The image showed Vroth adjusting the control interface before walking away. The counselors exchanged looks. One leaned closer to the projection, analyzing every pixel. Raxon stepped forward. "This evidence was recovered from dormant diagnostics. It cannot be altered without leaving traces." Mary added softly, "The official logs were erased. Only someone with instructor-level access could perform a wipe that thorough." Lyra didn't turn to look at them, but she felt their support like a solid wall behind her. She took a breath. Now the last piece. The corrupted conversation file appeared, Vroth speaking with two council delegates. "The human problem must be resolved quickly," one delegate said. "She undermines our platform," said the other. Vroth replied, "I will provoke her, and the tribunal will remove her." Gasps scattered through the hall. The counselors' composed expressions finally cracked, replaced with alarm. Lyra let the words hang. "He didn't want justice. He wanted me gone because my success threatened his political alliances." The lead counselor rose slightly. "Instructor Vroth, how do you answer these charges?" Vroth's composure fractured. This is an attack. Humans are manipulative, they twist anything to their advantage." Lyra held his gaze. "I didn't twist anything. I showed the truth." The chamber buzzed with rising voices, disbelief, outrage, confusion. Lyra straightened her posture. "I came here to learn. Instead, I survived sabotage, threats, and a campaign designed to crush me before I even began. If I had reacted violently, Vroth would have used it to confirm every stereotype about my species. But I didn't react. I endured." Her voice grew stronger. "That's what humans do. Not because we're dangerous animals, but because we refuse to be broken by fear." Mary's eyes glistened. Raxon's mandibles tightened in silent agreement. Lyra continued, "This institute claims to educate the brightest minds in the galaxy. Then it should value truth over fear. Justice over politics. And strength used responsibly." One of the counselors cleared their throat, visibly shaken. "We must deliberate." They retreated behind a shimmering barrier where whispers crackled like sparks. The hall pulsed with tension. Raxon leaned toward Lyra. "Your stance held." "Barely," she whispered. Mary took her hand gently. No. You held perfectly. Minutes passed, each one heavier than the last, until the barrier dissolved. The lead counselor rose. After reviewing the evidence, this tribunal finds Instructor Vroth guilty of misconduct, sabotage, and falsification of official records. Effective immediately, he is removed from his position and placed under council custody. 2 armored guards approached Vroth. He stepped back, eyes sharp with fury. "You think this changes anything?" he hissed at Lyra. "Humans will always be a threat." Lyra responded quietly, "Only to those who try to cage us." The guards escorted him away as he muttered curses through clenched teeth. The counselor turned to Lyra. "Student Hale, you are hereby cleared of all accusations. Furthermore, the council will authorize a review of all policies concerning humans within academic institutions." A pause. "You may continue your studies without restriction. This tribunal is dismissed." The hall erupted in layered sounds, surprise, relief, shifting alliances clicking into place. Lyra exhaled for the first time since entering the chamber. Raxon extended a lower arm. "Victory earned." Mary smiled softly. "The Institute will never be the same." Word spread across the station by night cycle. Some students avoided Lyra entirely, uncertain how to approach her after the spectacle. But others, many more than before, greeted her with cautious respect. The next morning, when Lyra stepped into her first class, the entire room stood. Not ordered. Not rehearsed. Just a quiet gesture of acknowledgement. She walked to her seat, every movement steady. They hadn't bowed to a Deathworlder. They stood for someone who refused to break. As she sat down, she whispered the truth she finally understood. They feared humans for the wrong reasons. And now, they finally know why they shouldn't try to break us. HFY. Lyra expected the storm to settle after the tribunal, but the aftermath rippled through the Institute in ways no one had predicted. Vroth's removal wasn't the end, it was the beginning of a seismic shift. People talked, whispered, argued. Some feared what her victory meant. Others, quietly relieved by the fall of a corrupt instructor, watched her with new consideration. The next few days felt surreal. Walking through the halls, Lyra noticed the subtle differences. Students no longer flinched when she passed. Security drones reduced their obsessive tracking. Staff members offered polite nods instead of cold silence. Yet the unease never fully left. Power rarely shifts without consequence. Raxon sensed it first. "You stand at the center of an unstable axis," he said as they walked toward the training halls. "When a structure cracks, the fragments do not fall in orderly lines." Lyra smirked slightly. Poetic for a warrior. Observation is part of combat. He tapped the plates along his arm. "You gained allies. You also made enemies." "I know," she said quietly. "And you do not seem afraid." Lyra sighed. "Fear isn't useful unless it pushes you forward." She entered her xenobiology class later that morning, and for the first time, the discussion paused in anticipation rather than discomfort. Instructor Rel, who had always treated her neutrally, gestured her forward. "Lyra, please join me. Your analysis during last cycle's exam was exceptionally precise." The offer stunned the room. Even Lyra needed a moment before stepping onto the platform. Rel displayed a complex molecular diagram. "Considering your unique physiology, your insight may broaden our understanding." Lyra examined the structure, tracing its unstable bonding pattern. "This chain collapses under minimal radiation," she said. "If you reverse the polarity of the central node, it stabilizes." Rel tilted her head. "Show us." Lyra adjusted the hologram, and the molecular model locked into equilibrium. A soft chime confirmed structural stability. Whispers broke out, admiration, not suspicion. Rel announced, "Humans are notoriously adaptive. Their perspectives may advance our field." For the first time, Lyra felt the weight of her presence shift. Not as a threat. Not as a political symbol. But as a student. By mid-cycle, she retreated to the courtyard again, her sanctuary beneath the archway of bioluminescent vines. Mary joined her with a datapad clutched in both hands. "You should see this," Mary said, sitting beside her. "The council released a formal directive this morning." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "About what happened?" "More than that." Mary turned the screen. "They suspended the anti-human faction. Pending investigation." Lyra stared at the message, absorbing every line. The directive was reshaping policies that had kept humans at arm's length for decades. Now, the restrictions were dissolving. Mary's voice softened. "Your stand changed things." Lyra nodded slowly. "I didn't expect the council to act this fast." "They had to," Mary said. "Ignoring evidence would have exposed their own weakness. You forced them to choose transparency." Lyra leaned back against the smooth stone wall. "I didn't plan to become a symbol." "That's how symbols work," Mary said gently. "They come from people who never wanted the role." Word of Lyra's tribunal spread beyond the Institute. The following cycles brought delegations from other departments, even ambassadors from nearby stations. They sought clarification, requested interviews, or simply observed her from a distance. She turned most requests down. She hadn't fought for fame. Still, one visitor caught her attention. The administrator who had warned her earlier, the one who had told her not to trust her allies, approached her after ethics class. "Human," he called out. Lyra stopped, measuring the shift in his tone, no contempt, no thinly veiled threat. Cautious respect. "Yes?" He folded his hands. "You exposed more than an instructor. You exposed a flaw many of us pretended did not exist." Lyra crossed her arms. "Flaws don't disappear because people ignore them." "True." He met her gaze. "It is good you didn't listen to me." She blinked, taken aback. He continued, "I gave that warning because I assumed the council would crush anyone who challenged its internal politics. I assumed you would break." A faint, rueful smile touched his lips. "You did not." Lyra studied him in silence. There was nothing to say that wouldn't cheapen the moment. He bowed his head. "Good luck, Lyra Hale. The Institute needs students like you." He left before she could reply. That evening, Lyra, Raxon, and Mary gathered in the engineering wing, sitting on warm metal crates near dormant engines. The hum of the station vibrated faintly beneath their feet. Raxon cracked open a sealed nutrient container and handed it over. "Tradition," he said. "Warriors share food after surviving a battle." Lyra accepted it, smiling. "Do I count as a warrior now?" "You won a war without lifting a blade," he replied. "That is a higher form of combat." Mary nodded. "You inspired others. That is rare." Lyra swallowed a mouthful, the unfamiliar flavor surprisingly pleasant. "I had help. I wouldn't have made it to the tribunal without both of you." Raxon straightened. "Your strength was your own. We only stood beside it." Mary added, "We choose who we stand with. And we chose you." Lyra looked between them, feeling a quiet warmth settle in her chest. "Then I'll make sure none of you regret it." Raxon tapped the edge of the crate. "You may need that resolve soon." Lyra narrowed her eyes. "What do you mean?" "Power vacuums attract those who crave influence," he said. "Vrotha's removal created space. Someone else will try to fill it." Mary's expression grew anxious. "There are already whispers. Certain factions want a new figurehead, someone who can reunite the old anti-human agenda under a subtler approach." Lyra exhaled slowly. "So this isn't over?" "No," Raxon said. "But advantage now lies with you." The next cycle confirmed it. Lyra received a summons, not from the Institute, but from a visiting fleet representative. When she entered the conference room, she found a human woman waiting for her, dressed in sleek navy attire marked with the symbol of the Human Diplomatic Corps. Lyra froze, stunned. She had expected news from the galaxy, but not this. The woman smiled warmly. Lyra Hale. I'm Commander Elisa Rourke. You've made waves out here. Lyra swallowed. The council made their decision public? Across 5 sectors, Rourke said. Human colonies are celebrating. They see you as proof we belong here. Lyra felt pressure building behind her ribs, pride and disbelief tangled together. Rourke stepped closer. Humanity is rebuilding. We need voices who can stand firm in hostile systems. People who don't bend under pressure. People like you. Lyra searched her face. Are you asking something? Yes. Rourke's tone softened. When your studies end, the diplomatic corps would like to sponsor your placement. A full ambassadorial track. Lyra's breath caught. Ambassador. A bridge between worlds. A representative of humanity. She had walked into this institute fighting for her right to stay. Now the galaxy was asking her to lead. Rourke added, you don't have to decide today. But understand, you changed perceptions for millions of people. Lyra steadied herself. I'll think about it. Rourke smiled. That's all I ask. She left as quietly as she had arrived, leaving Lyra standing in the stillness of the room. Lyra returned to her balcony overlooking the courtyard. Students crossed paths below, unaware of the shift occurring far above them. She leaned on the railing, letting the cool air brush against her face. Her heartbeat calmed. Everything had changed. And everything still could. But she wasn't afraid. Humans didn't break. They adapted. And Lyra Hale, the Deathworld girl they tried to expel, had just been offered a future they never imagined she could hold. She closed her eyes and whispered to herself. They wanted to erase us. Now they need us.